Hey everybody, how's it going? Dan Schinder here
Steven Schinder.
with our guest.
Yeah.
Oh, Roine Stolt is that?
That's right. We're so excited to have you and talk about so much stuff. One of the biggest things, of course, is the new Flower Kings album. We'll talk about your work history with the band and with John Anderson, a flash in the pan artist some people may have heard of. We'll get into that. But Steve, where do you want to start?
Right. So the Flower Kings began nearly 30 years ago, and look at you now, to quote the title of the new album coming from Inside Out
Yeah,
Music, September 8th. What would you say, Roine, has been some of the biggest changes over the years for the band?
the biggest changes. Wow, the biggest changes. I think everything is sort of going gradually. Uh, I mean, looking back, if I could step back like almost 30 years,
Sure.
what happened back then is I've been in the music business for a very long time, and I have to say also playing progressive rock. That's how I started professionally in 1974,
Mm.
and recording the first album 1975, being in a band called Kaipa in Sweden. But that was mainly we were touring all of Sweden. We were working each and every day. Maybe not Christmas Eve. I think we actually rehearsed the day before Christmas Eve, but then we spent time with the families and then going back again. And so work very hard. And we had some success here in Sweden, mainly played in Norway, Denmark, and but the records we sold were mainly in Sweden.
Right.
So that's how I started, and then went on from there to do all sorts of music, playing with different people, producing albums, touring, sometimes even doing sound, because I by doing my own recordings, I got into the sound thing, so I learned a bit about sound recordings and mixing desks and tweaking the knobs and microphones and all that. So that's what I did for a while, and then got back to music and playing, and sometimes even playing in cover bands.
Mm.
So I played my Beatles songs, my David Bowie songs, or what would be the most weird cover tunes. It could be anything from Neil Young to Frankie Goes to Hollywood, actually.
Oh,
Oh,
wow.
wow. Yeah.
That's what it was back then. People wanted to hear a song they heard on the radio. Okay, you play it.
That's right. Yeah.
But you learn from doing that. You learn different styles, and I always love that. I always love to not restrict my guitar playing to progressive rock. I used to be a blues guitar player from the beginning,
Mm.
and
Mm.
listening to Clapton and Peter Green and those guys. And then I got into prog rock, and I have to, here's Robert Fripp and here's Steve Howe, and this is
Yeah.
how they play, and and then you adapt a little bit to that. But in my heart, I always view myself more like a blues guitar player, that maybe closer to Dave Gilmour than to Hackett or Steve Howe, to be
All right.
honest.
Mm. The
Um,
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
no.
Oh, well, the music we've heard so far from the new album, based on the two singles that have come out, feels both classic Flower Kings, but also very now. What
Yeah.
would you say is the key to maintaining the band's musical identity while also moving forward?
Um, I don't know. Well, this is something we talk a little bit about, and I remember we talked about it before even starting working on the album. I think I said it was more like probably me, talking to the guys,
Mm,
saying, "Oh, well, we got all these albums out, and I'd like to make an album that sounds very much like the Flower Kings, but at the same time, we need to bring in something new. So we need to try different things. Not entirely. You can't like switch your style to something else because then you're gonna lose the audience.
Right.
But I'd like to put in stuff that we haven't played before, or try different styles. So whatever you can come up with that we feel is a new sound for the band, you know. So I think the composing is another part of it, you know. We try to pick some newly written songs, but also try to look back a few years. At least I did, and I think actually the starting of the whole album is actually a song that parts, not all of it, but parts of it was written even before the Flower King started. So this is something I composed probably around early 90s, 91, 92.
Does that tie into Beginner's Eyes?
Yeah.
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 Interesting.
Yeah. And this is something I found on an old demo that probably been transferred from my first Atari computer that I wrote at the time I did music on that one. And then I transferred to the Mac and then to another Mac. And now, I mean, I don't know how many Macs I've had since then, but I just move them, you know, move the files and try to save them, because maybe one day you hear it and then you think, oh, maybe that was a nice little melody. That's a nice little riff. So that's what happened with Beginner's Eyes. That's part of it. Not the lyrics, but some of the melodies and riffs in that one is actually something that was written even before the Flower King started as a band.
Interesting.
So,
And you also mentioned in your background getting into production. What is or has been your favorite aspect of being on the producer side, and how did that help you as a musician in the studio or with composing?
well, I think you listen to there's a few things that actually comes into play here. And one is that I started learning guitar in maybe 68, 69. And then I switched to bass guitar because my friend who actually taught me guitar. And the funny thing is, my friend that showed me how to play guitar, he plays on the song The Queen. So it's his, yeah, that's a nice book ending. But anyway, he was a better guitar player than me. So he said, well, how about you play bass? And then I think I started playing bass and listening to bass players, you know. And at the time I had some guys I like to listen to. I mean, of course, Paul McCartney, but Tim Bogert of Vanilla Fudge was a great player, you know. And so these type of bass players played a little bit more, you know. They're all over the fretboard.
Yeah, melodic bass playing.
Melodic bass, yeah, totally. And McCartney definitely melodic bass. And later on, of course, people like Mike Rutherford and Chris Squire, of course, of melodic bass. But I think I did that for a while, you know, and then I switched to guitar. But it gave me an idea about how I can change the direction of the music, playing bass and to harmonize. And also understand the chord structures, you know. And I didn't play piano at that time. Well, maybe a little bit, but over time I've been sort of forced to learn to play piano or keyboards, you know, and find out the chords, not just like the simple chords, but the big jazz chord, so to speak.
Yeah.
So and training my ear to hear all that. So I think that helped me to also understand. And not only that, actually, I started listening to drummers, you know, and try to understand the aspect of how you use your drums to keep the beat, but to, you know, use the accents, how to use the dynamics of your playing a drum kit, you know. And all the great that play dynamic, that's the kind of guys I like listening to, you know.
Me too.
A lot of actually jazz musicians, you know. And by learning a little bit of different instruments and how they sound and what range they have and how you can use them in the music context, I think that helped me also get into the production aspect of things and hearing how you mix an album what is if let's say you have a vocal theme, you need to support the vocal theme. You don't need to have lots of cool guitar licks in in the vocal theme,
Right.
or basic keyboard is just playing over it, or a drummer doing fills every
Right.
round.
Crazy chops over the vocals.
Yeah. That's what we do when we start. That's the beginner thing.
Yeah.
You play because it's fun, and then you start listening to what you're playing and say, oh, that didn't sound that great. Maybe if you just keep a straight beat here, and you stay on that bass riff, because that's gonna feel groovy after a time.
Yeah.
You and that's great with all the great funk players, and also people like Jaco Pastorius was the king of
Oh
keep
yeah.
that groove. So I mean, bit by bit, you learn about how different instruments can have an impact on the whole structure of the music, and it's been a quite a journey, and so nice to to learn about little things, and now I think also my hearing is, in a strange way, most musicians say, oh, my hearing is gone because of all the loud music on stage, and everyone is cranking up their Marshall stacks and all that.
Sure.
I play, sometimes loud on stage, but I try to keep it down, and I think I have enough left of my hearing to hear even small details. And when I'm in the studio, in particular, I never play the music loud.
Yeah,
Because
you've got to really hear what's happening from the near field speakers to the wide range, and
yeah,
you have to
and
have an ear for that.
I have actually just a near field. That's what I
Interesting.
do. Yeah, I don't have any big speakers, because what's the point? That's not the
Yeah.
way you or I gonna listen to it at home. There's just a
Right.
few hi-fi guys that have this big sound system, but
Right. Big theater sound, but most consumers,
yeah,
like you say, two speakers,
yeah, or even listen in earphones, or from your iPod or
earbuds.
iPod or whatever.
Yeah.
So you got to be realistic about that, and I'm trying to do the mixes. If the mix is sounding great on a low volume, you can hear the kick drum, you can hear the bass lines, you can
Mhm.
hear the tiny little triangle or tambourine or something like that, or the backing vocals. Then
Yeah.
it's a mix. Anyone can mix a fat big mix with lots of compression,
Yeah, where
and
everything's just blowing at you. But
yeah,
like
yeah,
you
and
say,
the
when
power
it's
chord, left right power chord thing.
yeah, but when it's real low, like you say, the lower you can bring down that volume and still hear
Oh,
the articulation of everything, you've got a good mix.
yeah,
A
totally.
funny quote, Roine, is on the Made in Japan album, the live album by Deep Purple, between one of the songs, you can hear Ian Gillan say, and he's being sarcastic, I'm sure. He's saying, make everything louder than everything else.
Yeah,
It just sounds so
yeah,
funny. It's
yeah,
like this infinity spiral upward and
yeah,
wider.
that's totally Spinal Tap. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the second single, Dream. Steve and I just are crazy about this song in this video.
Yeah, it has a nice little backstory we heard about that I think some of us can relate to, hearing music in a dream and then wanting to take note of it before the memory of the dream fades away. Can you tell us a bit more about this song?
Yeah, I mean, it's well, you said you probably experienced that kind of thing too. You hear music, or you're at the concert and you hear some great band, and you that's in the dream, and then you're thinking, what is this, And
Hmm.
it happens to me every now and then that I hear a song and I think, oh, that's a great song, and I wake up, at 7 or something like that, and then you go back to sleep because you think it was so great, so I will remember that, but you don't. But you don't. It's gone. But this time I was smart enough to say, okay, it's actually 5:30. Let's get up, and I have my studio at home. So I get up, I go into the studio, switch on everything, and I just, hammer out the chords on the piano and start singing the melody, get it into the computer, and maybe an hour and a half later I can go back to sleep. And And I had parts of the lyrics and I had the vocal melody, and it's actually quite a simple song. But there was something about it that I felt that lying in my bed, I felt, what if I don't remember this? I'm gonna never forgive myself doing that. Why I should get up, actually do it now. Because
While
if
you
I
have it.
yeah, going back to sleep, I'm not gonna remember it. You think you're gonna remember it, but you don't.
Right.
It's not
Exactly.
meant to be. But this time, for whatever reason, I went in and I tracked the basics of the song, the melody, chords, and some of the vocal things. And I'm glad I did, because
Yeah.
it's in a way it's probably meant to be, or and if in fact, when we recorded the album and everything was pretty much done, we were talking about songs, and I remember Hasse, the other singer, he said, "Well, that's a great song. That song should definitely be somewhere in the beginning of the album, and that's maybe could be the single." He was really, yeah, he was very, he was insisting this should be the single. I said, "Well, it's a good song. I don't know if it should be a single really, because is it really a Flower King song? Does it have the Flower King sound?" In that sense, is it something that will get people excited? But both him and Michael, and I think also Mirko, the drummer, said the same thing. So, I said, well, probably you guys are right. It's just like,
You may have been too close to it
I
to
think
hear it with objectivity the way they did,
absolutely, absolutely. But I was because the way the song came to me, I was just open-minded to, well, maybe that's meant to be, and,
Yeah.
and maybe they're right.
Yeah. The video and the artwork on the cover of the album is featured in the video, which is just amazing. And Steve is going to put the YouTube links to both songs that we're going to be talking about in the comments. He's got to pin it to the top. We encourage you all to watch it. The only reason we don't fly it in and show it is obviously because it's an official video and soundtrack, and it'll get muted and all that. But we're going to put the links there so you can go to their channel and check it out. But it's so modernly hippie, if I could put it that way, just like your music.
I get it.
Yeah, it's really cool. Is this like what's going on in Sweden, or are you guys still like an anomaly? Like, what's the music scene like there as a whole? Is it more like ABBA and Tears for Fears and B-52s, and then there's you guys, or is there a lot of people trying to keep up with the prog scene or the metal scene? What's it like? What's the diversity or lack of there?
It's actually everything. I mean, the big commercial things is dance music. I think it's machine music. So
Wow.
So it's usually, I mean, the big seller, or the videos that have like 5 million hits, on YouTube. These are people that are probably in their 20s.
Yeah.
They have funny clothes and a funny hairdo, and they're kind of young and hip, and they're in.
Yeah.
And it's just like, it seems for whatever reason, these are the people that the record labels are working hard to promote harder, because they can, or maybe, I don't know, there must be a reason, or the music is simple to get out of the crowds, and you get
Maybe equating to when new wave and that stuff first hit, and there was that whole new, literally a wave of something for the people who didn't fit in with the rock scene or the metal scene and didn't get progressive, and folksy was too old school for them. And then new wave came out, and here's this whole genre for a whole new culture of people. Maybe it's something like that.
I don't think so. I think it's very simple. It's just like very simple, easy listening songs,
Accessible.
And I think young people can identify with them. They cannot identify with me, or Ian Anderson, or Todd Rundgren, or these people. They cannot identify with us. But there may be people that love this kind of music. Once they get exposed to it and listen a little bit more, they can find things in it. Just the way I found out about old guys music, you know, when I was I listened to whatever Cannonball Adderley or later to John Coltrane, or you know, these
Right.
guys. Frank Zappa wasn't a super old guy back then, but
It's all relative though, right?
yeah, but he was not really he wasn't the Monkees, if you know what I mean, or he wasn't the
Yeah.
Hall.
But
So
he was ancient in his 40s for the time.
I know, just the way he looked from some other planet. But the thing is, I think it has to be like this, and it's not it's, I mean, it is what it is. But in Sweden, you have that. But then, of course, you have ABBA, and ABBA are even older than me, you know. So they're old people right now.
Right.
They made an album last year, I think.
Yeah, they did.
They released a new album. That was great. And then you have the alternative rock scene, of course. So you have the type of bands, and then you have more like folk music, or folk music meets rock, almost like Bob Dylan style music. And then you have electronica. So you have like two people in raincoats playing synths and different electronica things, you know.
Yeah.
And then you have death metal bands in Sweden. There's plenty of metal in Sweden.
So there's a lot of different things.
Oh yeah, definitely.
That's
and
great.
then you have a vibrant jazz scene. I mean, lots of young jazz musicians, and very good, I have to say. I mean, great players, you know, saxophone players and drummers, and absolutely world class musicians.
Oh wow. Do they get to venture out, Roine, and play like around Europe or even outside of Europe, or is it more of a in-country close?
I think some of them. I mean, we've had a keyboard player in the band now for a couple of months, and Daniel Lantz, and he's in a jazz group that's more like a funk jazz thing, you know. And I know they've been touring around, you know. I think they've been in Japan, but I definitely know they've been in America and play there, you know. And
that's great.
I have a couple of other friends, you know, playing that type of music that actually go out playing festivals in Europe, and then you have a couple of prog bands, of course, the usual. I mean, Anecdoten and Anglagard and all those guys are around for a while, and cool. So I think there's actually not one single thing happening in Sweden. I think it's lots of different music, you know. And we have a live scene here, a stage here in Uppsala, an outdoor stage, and funnily enough, actually John Anderson played there 2 weeks ago.
Oh, 2 weeks ago. Wow.
Was crazy because he's in Europe. Maybe they went home now, but playing the last show. But
with Paul Green,
with Paul Green, yeah. And I just found out. And I said to John, do you know, you're going to play my hometown. What are the chances you're playing my hometown? I was born in the hospital just about 500 meters from the stage.
Oh, wow, how funny.
Yeah, it's crazy. But anyway, so this stage, they have sometimes a death metal band, and then you have typical Swedish folk music, and then you have pop top 40s thing, you know, and then you have music for older folks, and all the summer from beginning of June, I think, until beginning of September, they have a variation of different styles of music, and sometimes even American. I think I saw Warren Haynes. You're familiar with Warren Haynes?
I'm not. Are you, Steve? No,
I'm not.
Allman Brothers band.
We'll look him up. Yeah.
Allman Brothers. You know Allman Brothers?
Yeah. We'll have to. This is why I asked that question, because I think it's a great way to discover new music outside of what we're mostly exposed to, you know, in our own regional areas.
Yeah. But anyway, Warren Haynes has been around for a very, very long time. He played with the Allman Brothers a long time, and he has his own band called Gavin Mule, I think. And
Oh, I'm familiar with Government Mule. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
Is a
Interesting.
great singer, great guitar player. They
Yeah.
played summer the same stage, So anyway, we get a little bit of that, in my hometown. In Sweden, in general, I think I can't complain really. I think it's fine, and we can play shows here in Sweden with the Flower Kings. Not
Hmm.
to a super big audience, but good enough, I
Yeah,
think.
that's great.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, this past year, there have also been reissues of the Flower King's back catalog, with The Sum of No Evil having been reissued for vinyl earlier this summer. What's the process been like getting those reissued, and some even for the first time on vinyl, from what I understand?
Yeah, true. Well, what happened was that the record company contacted me and said, "We're gonna do your back catalog on vinyl, and anything you want to check, as far as the artwork or correct stuff that's
Mm,
maybe not correct nowadays." And I said, well, I'd like to look over the master tapes, and see if anything can be actually improved. And
Hmm.
it just felt like, okay, they're doing this on vinyl, and they did also vinyl plus CD. So I'm thinking, okay, if they're gonna have the whole catalog back, in
yeah.
stock, I
Wow.
might as well do it proper.
Mm.
And I'm glad I did, but at the same time, I regretted that. I told them
The
I'm
amount
gonna.
of work.
Yeah. It took me about 1.5 years to go through, and you have to understand the very first Flower Kings albums. They were recorded on reel-to-reel tape.
Hmm.
So I needed to find the tapes, and what you do with tapes, to be able to play old tapes, you have to put them in an oven, and bake them for about whatever 20 hours or something like that,
Yeah.
and then put them on the player, and then take them into the system, digital system,
Right.
and
Were
mix
they
it.
16, 24 track? They were 24, right?
No, 16 track. The
Oh,
first few of us were 16 track, and then I added like an ADAT, like a
yeah.
digital that I
I remember
synced.
the ADATs. Yeah.
Yeah, so I did that, and then we moved on to hard drives and to in the final stages, to computer based.
Hmm.
So that's I mean that's I'm glad I did it, but it was lots of work, and it was interesting also because I reconnected with the albums in a way, and I was pleasantly surprised hearing some of it. I have to be honest, I some of the albums I hadn't heard them in years. They
That
were
must have
just,
been a trip to kind of revisit it, not
oh,
sporadically, but as a catalog for a year and a half, going through them with those ears, right? That must have been
yeah. Some of the
interesting.
songs I probably haven't heard in 10 or 12 years, something like that.
Yeah.
And coming back and hearing that, I was surprised how great some of it sounded. And I was surprised also some of it didn't sound that great. But I mean, these were the pieces I remixed and fixed.
Yeah.
And it was a little bit
Interesting.
over compressed, and uh, different ideas about sound, and different ways of mixing, and different equipment, I have to say. So now I have a listening system that is more accurate, and lots of things have changed over time.
I was going to say
Right,
that that's
definitely.
interesting. Yeah, the leap in technology between
Oh,
when those recordings were recorded, mixed, and mastered and pressed versus now reissuing them and working with today's technology.
totally, yeah.
Yeah, probably
Yeah.
going from like a propeller plane to a spaceship.
Almost, yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, just the way you go from a tape where you have, like, in my case, 16 channels that you need to fill with something. Okay, you can't have 16 channels of drums like we
yeah,
have today, maybe 16 or 18 channels of drums. But
right.
then you have the drums, but then you have space for the bass, for the keyboards, for the vocals, for the percussion guitars, acoustic guitars.
Yeah,
So you have to think, and you have a plan of how you want to map it up, and what you want to put on.
Yeah. And then it's talking about reissues. There's another recent issue with the Anderson Stolt on orange vinyl. And I was going to ask why orange, but I think I might know the answer because your room is kind of orange. You have an orange amp and cabinet back there. Is orange a color close to your heart?
No, not at all. I think
so it's just the leftover vinyl they had.
No, yeah, I mean, it's actually my thinking when you have an album. I look at the cover, and I think, okay, what kind of colors do we have here? And if I can find a color that sort of match the cover of the artwork,
Yeah, it's a really nice cover too.
Yeah, there you go. So the orange is complemented. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, a little bit like that. And sometimes you discuss with the record label. I think for this new one, I said definitely, because you have on this one, you have this yellow flower.
Yeah.
And the eye is kind of brownish yellow, and then you have all the greens here. So I suggested, okay, let's make a yellow and a green one, and it turned out to be yellow and something else. I don't know, blue one. I don't know why.
Someone was colorblind or something.
Yeah, could be.
Pun intended.
No, yeah, I mean, no big deal. It's fine. It's fine.
And by the way, Steven, that guy, Steven ranks that Anderson Stolt album as one of his most regarded albums ever, along with Tales from Topographic Oceans and Elias of Sun Halo. These are like his 3 favorite albums ever.
Yeah, like it really lifted my spirits when I was going through like sort of a tough time several years back, and I love it. It lives rent free in my head. So I was curious, what was the reason for the reissue and remixing? Like, what were the differences in the remix?
Yeah, being that that's so recent compared to something from 23 years ago.
I know. I don't understand. No, it actually comes from the fact that when we released the albums, the album back then, it was in 2016, right?
Yes.
Yeah, 16. Then almost immediately there was talk about doing a surround mix, which I started. So I think I surround mixed half of the album, and then it sort of, I don't know what happened. It didn't really happen. And also I did because as we were talking about tape machines and all that, the evolution of sound recordings and how people listen to music, and the downloads, the 24-bit 96, lossless, blah blah blah, all that, So I was in the middle of that, and people sending me email, oh, can you mix this, and oh yeah, okay, I have my surround system here, I can start a mix, and then it goes, away like that, poof, and something else happens, and I hear nothing about it again. But I had already started doing stereo mixes in 24-bit 96 in 2000, could have been 17, I think. Probably maybe 5 years ago. So I did that, and they were just lying around, and then so much happened in between then and now, and for me, coming back to the Flower Kings, doing albums, touring, and the COVID, of course, and for John, I think first with Rick and Trevor doing the tour, and then Paul Green and the band Geeks and everything. There's always some, and also the Thousand Hands,
So
there's so much, happening all the time, and for both of us. And so, but then we realized that people couldn't buy the album anymore. And I thought that, well, so I talked to the record label, said, well, how are we supposed to sell or recoup if people can't buy the album? That's weird, If you have the album, you should have it in store,
Right.
Yeah, and now with the with the demand for vinyl again, I think they decided to do the vinyl, and then I had already the mixes.
Oh,
the interesting thing here is that the opening track actually has 2 minutes that wasn't on the original.
Ooh.
Oh wow.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah,
So you
so
get some bonus stuff.
yeah, Tails kind of had something like that too, funny enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it comes from the fact that I did a remix of it, but I didn't cut out that bit, and that's in my mind that's a great keyboard solo from Tom Brislin, a synth solo
Yeah.
for a part. But for whatever reason, we did cut out that for the original album. But I had it in here, and I was just thinking, why would we cut that out now? Because I bet there's so many people will love to hear that, and you have
that's
the
cool.
way. So, okay, you have the other version, you have the CD if you want to listen to that. But now we have this one with another 2.5 minutes of a great keyboard solo, So
What
it's
was
different.
the process like, Roine, working with John on that album?
Well, the process, I think it's something that came from, well, we played the show on a cruise ship, and so we connected there, and then I think the record label said something like, well, you're probably the person that should work with John Anderson would be you, because of the way you write music and hear music and arrange music. You could help him, realize something that will suit his style of singing and writing. So they connected us, and they sent a mail to John, and I think he sent me the same day. I think sent me a couple of songs, and we just wasn't much talk. We just started working on something,
Interesting.
Yeah, interesting. And I just kept it open, and he kept sending me stuff, and I was reworking and cutting and pasting and doing bits, and he was re-singing stuff and rewriting lyrics. And so it was a bit of a process, before we could sort of understand.
Find a groove.
Yeah, I mean, understand what we were actually working. It's usually like that, you try things out, and some of the songs didn't work out, and some of the songs actually I was surprised actually at some of the developments of some of the songs, even a simple song. And I think that's the greatness of John, is actually he can, and I understand it better now, he can do like a very simple vocal phrase, and if it's connected in a way with the music and the chords in the right way, I think it can be great. So if you listen to, for instance, you listen to things like Topographic Oceans, there's so many parts there that you can actually pick up an acoustic guitar, strum a few chords, and you can sing it, and it's great. But then if you put on whatever, Alan's drums and the Mellotrons and Steve Howe's guitar, it becomes a prog rock epic.
Right.
And I think John has that ability to write simple melodies without sounding simple in a negative way. I think it's simple in a very positive way, just like maybe Paul McCartney.
Interesting.
I think there's two people that can actually do simple things, but they do it in a way that's classy and elegant,
Yeah, that's neat. Do you happen to have a recollection of perhaps a funny anecdote of when you guys were working together, something funny with John that you can share? Oh, sounds like there's a lot.
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, it's usually the most of the most of the communication was done by email, and that could be at the time it could be maybe 5 or 10 emails a day with like MP3 files sending back, and he sang something, sending back to me, etc. At one point I was sitting here in the studio, and it may have been working with our album, it could have been something else, some Flower Kings related stuff. But I'm sitting here in my studio, and the phone rings. And the funny thing, the funny part is I was actually sitting in my studio chair where I'm sitting now, and I was really tired. So I just, in the afternoon, and I take a nap in my like this, and the phone rings, and I pick up the phone. Hello, Roine, sir. Hi, it's John. I said, who? and And he said, "Well, how many John do you know?"
30.
Yeah, and I just felt so stupid because I was sitting in the studio just waking up, to a phone call from John Anderson, and it was, "How many John do you know?" Well,
That's such
not,
a funny question.
yeah,
Like he's got a unique name or something.
yeah.
How would you possibly know another John of all names, right?
I think I probably know maybe one or two, but it was just so funny because I was just working so hard and then falling
Yeah.
asleep.
And then there's that voice, right?
And
That
and
voice.
and you can never miss. Well, that must be John Anderson,
Right.
but I was so messed up in my head and so tired that I was, oh, yeah,
Funny. Thanks for
Yeah.
sharing that.
Yeah. And we've been hearing here and there that a second Anderson Stolt album might be in the works. Is there anything you're allowed to share about that at this point in time?
We won't
yeah.
tell John.
No, come on. No, I mean, not really. It's I actually worked the last couple of days. I worked with bringing out the hard drives and trying to do proper mixes for us to review, because of course when he was here in Uppsala and played the show, we talked about it, and he said, well, we must finish this album. So I thought, well, we really must finish this album. So I brought up the hard drives and listened to it, and I have a pretty good idea of what sections of what songs I think would be great. There's stuff on there. There's one little song he wrote together with his son, that I absolutely love. Great song, very melodic, very poppy, but great.
Interesting.
Yeah, I'm thinking it's a kind of a song that you think you hear on the radio. It could be a hit song.
Oh, wow.
That's type of not a dance song, nothing like that. It's more like a, I don't know what to call it, but it's just like a very radio friendly song, maybe 3.5, 4 minutes. So I mean, that's great stuff. There's progressive stuff and more developed, orchestral things. So we've been working on lots of stuff, but I think now is the time to pin it down to and decide what can be recorded and tracked, track the drums and bass and all that. A lot of the guitar work is done already, but and some keyboard works, but I'm sure we're gonna add things, and so I'm trying my best to make it happen, And
great. We would love that.
Yeah, I'll be one of the first people to pre-order it when it becomes available.
I'm sure you will.
Yeah.
So Tom Brislin, you also mentioned, and you and Jos Reingold worked with him along with Marco Miniman and Daniel Gildenlow as the Sea Within a few years ago. And when we had Tom on our show earlier this year, and we asked him about possible future plans for the Sea Within, he had a never say never attitude, though we know that everyone's busy with certain things. So how do you view the possibility of more work from the Sea Within in the future, if that's possible?
Well, I mean, I hope for a second album, but being realistic, the way things are right now, with Tom with Kansas and Jonas playing with Steve Hackett, and I try to scale down a little bit because I've been in many different bands and doing many different projects, so I try to cut down a little bit and concentrate on the Flower Kings, try to concentrate on making this album with John, and I have one other project that I've been working on this summer. That's an album with the drummer from who used to be in Jethro Tull, Don Perry.
Oh, he's a good friend. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So was Marco. Yeah. They've both been on the show many times. Yeah.
Oh,
It's
yeah, yeah,
funny. I've
cool.
been thinking about Doan lately. I need to ring him up and have him on. Yeah.
Oh, please do. Please do. Anyway, they sent me music. I met Don many years ago. We were playing support to Jethro Tull show in Italy, I think. And we connected after that. So he called me up and we talked for maybe 2 hours, and they had a project at the time called Thread, I think. Him and a guy called Vince DiCola. He's a guy who made music for the Transformer movies.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
He's a really, really good piano player. And so that's what he does, and they've been working on an album for a long time now, and Don asked me if I would play some guitar on it, and I did, and then he asked me to play some more, and I ended up playing on all the album. I think that he has Steve Hackett on it too, and they have people like Tony Levin and Leland Sklar, bass
Oh,
player.
wow.
Yeah, so these kind of people, but I have to say it's a really good album. It's one of the best albums I played on in my life, I have to say.
Wow. That's a
Yeah,
lot.
yeah, and it's really good. And I'm really keeping I'm hoping they can get it released, and finished. And he's good friends with what's the name? Another drummer who played with Toto, Simon Phillips.
Simon. Yeah.
Simon. So Simon is supposed to mix the album, which is
Oh,
yeah, I think it's a good idea because he does great sound.
that's great.
Yeah, so I'm just hoping that there's something happens with it.
Cool. We
With
hope so too. We'd love to have you back on to talk about
just
that. Maybe with
yeah.
Dawn when it comes out.
Oh, please
Yeah.
do, because it's so good. It's. I mean, it would be a shame if it just would lie around and not. I mean, I know what it is like today. You have like Inside Out. I'm trying to sell it into Inside Out, and have these
Yeah.
guys listen to it, and because they're sort of the big prog label today, with Dream Theater and Yes and Jethro Tull and all these Kansas and all these bands signed to the label. I think it's the right label to be on.
Yeah. And I'm really happy to hear that Dawn is so active again, because I know he spent a lot of time making sure he was there for Heather and taking care of her. So
Oh yeah, no, I know.
it's great that he's doing something like this. It's
Oh
exciting.
yeah. I'm
Great.
gonna try to push him to be finished in time, because it's, you never know. We're here for a short time, and it's like, I think it's just too good to be just lying around.
Right.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Interesting. Wow, I had no idea that was coming. That took me by surprise for sure. And we also heard that the Absolute Universe and the Final Flight live at La Olympia are the last releases from Transatlantic. How do you view the breadth of work in that band? Any memories you'd like to share?
Well, there's always memories. Transatlantic as a band, that get together. Used to be we get together in America to record in the studio, and then we split, and then maybe half a year later we end up on a tour, and so let's say we tour for 2 or 3 weeks, and that's it, and then we split, and then lots of other things happen in between, and everyone is in so many different bands.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's difficult to keep together and to get a really a solid band feel, I think, for a band like that. So I don't know, it just felt like the last album we did was a good one, and the show we played in Paris was a really good show, and I was really happy with that. Great audience, and we played well, and so I don't know. It feels like, and I probably told them before, but definitely when I saw the show and mixed and everything, it felt like it was a good decision. I felt like this is probably we should end here and end on a note, you know.
High note. Yeah.
Yeah, this is how we should be remembered.
Interesting. That's cool. And what can you tell us about the upcoming Flower Kings concerts in Europe? And will you be coming to North America?
We will definitely, we need to go to North America because we're playing well, the cruise, I don't know, do they call it Cruise to the Edge?
Yes, Cruise to the Edge.
Yeah. We're going to ask
Yeah,
you about that too. Yeah.
yeah, because I think Yes is not playing Cruise to the Edge, so I was thinking that maybe they changed the name, but it's still Cruise to the Edge. Okay.
Yeah, it's still Cruise to the Edge.
Yeah.
It's still Cruise to the Edge. Yeah. Anyway, so we're playing that, and the plan or the idea is, of course, to try to get a few shows in America happening.
Great. Since you'll be here.
Yeah, I mean we're there already, so let's say we can get 5 or 6 shows in America, maybe 2 in Canada. That makes sense to me.
Yeah. I live in the mountains. A few years ago, my wife and I said, screw it when it comes to living in the city. So we live in the mountains about 100 miles east of Phoenix. You can come play at our house. It's nice.
Arizona. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm from LA and she's from the Bronx, and we met in Vegas years ago. So we had a lifetime of big city life, and we just wanted to kind of get away a little bit. And I told her when she said, we came through here on a little trip, and then she said she wanted to move here. And I said, well, if they have running water and really good internet, we'll check it out. And here we are 7 years later.
Cool.
Yeah. So it's different.
I mean, I love cities, but I have like a love and hate relationship with some of it's like New York or Los Angeles or London or Paris, you know.
Yeah.
I love it and I hate it.
Yeah. Well, we'd love to see you in America. Yeah, for sure. That'd be great. So much going on with you guys. Gosh.
Yeah, I know. I have this. This is what I do these days. I do this lists of stuff, you know, that I need to.
Yeah.
I absolutely need to, because there's so much going on. So no, I rather have a list and I can sort of, oh, okay, I did that yesterday. And even things like this, doing the interviews, I need to keep track of it and you know.
Yeah. We appreciate you taking the time.
That helps.
Yeah. Definitely. I think Steve has 1 or 2 last questions in our can.
Right. So I was wondering, what was it like working on Steve Hackett's Genesis Revisited 2? I think you were on a song there, and you were also on live at the Royal Albert Hall about a decade ago.
I think it started with oh my goodness. I think it started with, we invited Steve to play, because we were playing Giant Hogweed, the Genesis song.
I love that song.
Yeah, we were playing that with Transatlantic as a cover on some album. And then someone said, well, ask Steve if he want to join the band when we play in London. And he came down to play with us. And then we played another festival and he played with us again. And and then I bumped into Steve a couple of times. We were playing shows with must have been maybe Flower Kings, or maybe Agents of Mercy. We were playing somewhere Southern Europe, you know, for some festivals, and we were bumping into Steve every now and then, and the Lorelei Festival. So you know, we got to know Steve, and he's been also going to some Transatlantic show, I think, even before that, even before we played. So anyway, I got to know Steve, and then I was just sitting here in the studio, and one day he called me and said, how do you feel about playing with me, doing this tour I'm doing this autumn, you know, we're playing England and we're playing Europe, and then maybe go to America. Oh, so that sounded like fun. And I said, well, one thing for sure, I know lots of the Genesis material, a little bit depending what you're playing. And of course, I understand it's not We Can't Dance or something from Group.
Right.
It's probably something he played on,
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, but and he said, well, at this point, it's going to be stuff from Foxtrot, from Nursery Crime, from Selling England, and Lamb Lies Down on Broadway. And these are exactly the albums I know.
Yeah. Such great music.
Yeah. Because I started as a bass player, and here I get a chance to play bass and I play guitar. So both actually, and I know the material. So yeah.
Is there, I know this is a tough question, but I have to ask right now, is there a favorite song out of that catalog you just mentioned that is like right in your groove that you just get goosebumps to play? That's so much in your lane and really resonates with your musical sensibilities.
Yeah. I always had a soft spot for Cinema Show, I have to
Yeah.
say. And we played that, and I could feel the energy on stage. And I think it was, in a way, because Steve is very nice in that sense. Reality is he didn't even play on most of Cinema Show. The instrumental section, I don't think he's playing. I think it's just Phil, Mike, and Tony playing that last part. So, but I mean,
thinking that through, yeah.
Etc.
Yeah, because Mike is just strumming on the 12 string at that point.
Yeah.
Bam, 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 bam. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, and probably using the bass pedals and stuff,
Yeah.
Anyway, so it's but I think it's very generous of Steve to play these songs. So it's not like he's only playing songs that was his favorite songs or songs he wrote.
Yeah.
He's playing anything that Mike wrote or Tony wrote, good songs that people want to hear.
Right.
And he's doing a great job, and the band is great, and a great show. And that was a great time for me playing with the band, because I loved Genesis. When I was a teenager, I listened to it a lot, and that helped me. So for me, it was easy, I bet it was more difficult for Jonas that stepped in after me,
Yeah.
because he had heard maybe a Juke or something like some of the late.
Wow.
Yeah, maybe Seconds Out or something like that.
Yeah.
But I had a history, so for me it was easy. When Steve mentioned a song, I could almost play it without rehearsing it.
Yeah, I personally, I'm a drummer. You can probably tell, and I play that music all the time. I just love that music. It's just so timeless. It's just, there's so much substance in the dynamics and the storytelling and the simplicities to the the complicated, it's just everything. It's 360 music is what I like to call it. And I grew up on that too, and it's just imprinted on my brain. I just love playing that stuff.
And it's amazing to think that this music was made, I mean, the first few albums, it was made by not teenagers, but they were just like 21, 22.
Yeah.
20.
Yeah. And decades later, it's still just legendary. It's amazing.
I'm thinking when I was that age, I didn't, well, I could play and I made albums, but I hadn't really developed my skills as a writer or a player until later, So
I could play, but I was playing with my belly button most of the time.
Yeah. Probably, yeah. But I mean, it's bands like that, like King Crimson, Yes, and Genesis. They were really pushing it, when they in their early 20s, and that's amazing to think about that right now.
It is like, where did that come from?
Yeah.
All at the same time too, right? If the bands you just mentioned, you pick any year and you look at what each of those bands were putting out each year at the same time, like where did all that come from?
Yeah, I think they probably inspired each other, and in the case of I don't know, I suppose in the case of Genesis, they heard Procol Harum, they heard Yes, I suppose, King Crimson. So and lots of fusion bands, you know, and Frank Zappa and all that, you know. You
Yeah.
pick a little bit of
Throw in
this.
ELP at the same time, that
Yeah.
same
Yeah,
generation.
yeah. Totally. I mean,
Yeah.
they were a big band. The EP were, I think, crucial for the keyboard dominated
Yeah.
progress.
Yeah.
So for guys like Tony Banks or maybe even Rick Wakeman, you know, I think people like Keith Emerson was, you know, the big guy at the time.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, and just one more question from one of our viewers. Tony Brown from Louisville, Kentucky says, psyched to see you guys on Cruise to the Edge, and wants to know if you will play much from the upcoming Look at You Now album on tour.
Once we get to the well, this tour that we're doing now in October, we probably play like 4 or 5 songs. But at the time
wow.
but the time we go on the cruise, we probably play more, I think.
Mm.
And if you add Smoke on the Water and Freebird, I'm definitely on board.
But
Yeah.
it's great to represent the album. That's great to
Yeah.
hear.
We actually play a couple of cover tunes. We played Holland and Germany a couple of months ago, and we did some odd covers actually. We did let's see, we did Soon by Yes.
Oh, wow.
Oh, that's
Nice.
beautiful.
Hasse can sing that because his voice is, you know, kind of the same range.
Mm.
So we play that, but the funny thing is we also played Ohio by Neil Young.
Oh, wow.
It's something entirely different,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
And I mean, we've been doing things just for fun, you know, playing a David Bowie song, or we're playing, you know, Beatles songs, of course,
Yeah,
lots of
stuff
Beatles.
from your
Nice.
roots, right?
Yeah.
Always nice to play homage.
Yeah, you know, it's sometimes the fans enjoy that, you know, and in particular when you're having these fan gatherings or you play a show in the evening, but the daytime or the afternoon you play some other music, you know.
Yeah.
And so it's not Flower King's music, all of it, and sometimes music that inspired us, sometimes something that we feel we can do something interesting with, you know, a different version or just groovy or improvise or whatever, you know.
Yeah.
I'd love to make Allman Brothers song, and well, maybe I did back in the day, but things like that, music I've been listening to way back, you know, Jimi Hendrix or the Allman Brothers, that kind of thing, you know. I'd love to play stuff like that.
Yeah. Oh,
Because
that's
I enjoy it. I enjoy playing it, that kind of thing, you know.
yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much for taking time to meet with Steve and I and our Yesshift and Drum Talk TV fans. We're simulcasting all our Yesshift episodes live on Drum Talk TV as well. Hang on the line for just a moment after we say goodbye to the audience. And everybody, thank you so much for following what we do here on Yesshift and Drum Talk TV. On Yesshift, you can follow us as a podcast, audio only, at anchor.fm/Yesshift, and on Facebook at www.facebook.com/Yesshift and youtube.com/@Yesshift, and Drum Talk TV. Everyone pretty much knows where that is.
Yeah.
drumtalktv.com, facebook.com/Yesshift, etc. I mean, Drum Talk TV, etc., etc. Thanks, Roine, so much for joining us. It's been a thrill. We'd love to have you again. Hang on the line. And everybody, friendly reminder,
Thanks.
go out, get the album, and watch the 2 videos that Stephen put in the comments. They're fantastic. Thanks, everyone.
They're fun.
Bye.
Bye-bye.